Continuing our coverage of the breaking news out of a New York City courtroom. A jury has awarded over $83 million in damages to writer E. Jean Carroll, who sued the former president for defaming her. Carroll departed the courtroom just minutes ago. This was the second trial brought by Carroll against Donald Trump. She already won $5 million in May in a case where the jury found that the ex-president liable for sexually abusing her. Today, just like in the trial last year, the jury only took about 3 hours to reach their verdict. The jury's decision came following a contentious day in the courtroom. Trump stormed out at one point, but returned for his attorney's closing arguments. We are back with NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard. Vaughn, I am told that you have a reaction from the former president.
Alicia, Trump just posted on his social media account as he boards a plane. He's going to be campaigning in Las Vegas, Nevada tomorrow, just in the last few minutes posting, quote, absolutely ridiculous. I fully disagree with both verdicts and will be appealing this whole Biden-directed witch hunt focused on me and the Republican Party. Of course, there is no evidence that Joe Biden or the Democratic Party has anything to do with the lawsuit brought against Donald Trump. But what a jury here found today is more than $80 million in damages that are awarded to E. Jean Carroll by Donald Trump. And I think if we could just take a step back here, 8 years ago when I was covering the Trump campaign and the Republican primary and then the general election, there were conversations around the more than dozen allegations of sexual abuse and harassment against Donald Trump. They were allegations and accusations at the time that we saw Republicans who ultimately allied with Donald Trump repeatedly refute and come to Donald Trump's defense because they were, in their words, merely allegations. The jury in none of these instances had been convened and found Donald Trump liable or guilty of any charges. This go around, though, time is different. In what we now have in a likely Republican nominee in 2024 is somebody who has been found to have sexually abused a woman, but also, after defaming her repeatedly, is now having to pay up more than $80 million to her. I think that this is a moment when the Republican Party is already seeing, if we can make this political for a moment, a drop-off in support, particularly around women around the country here. And for Donald Trump here, he has continued up into hours just before this jury made this decision here this evening, continued to make the very statements that led to the defamation case against him in the first place, even posting overnight a video in which he continued to say that the story was fabricated, that he had never met her. Of course, Donald Trump also a year ago chose to not testify in his own defense. He didn't show up to the court when the first jury was hearing the testimony of E. Jean Carroll. And instead, he has tried to cast this aside, Alicia, as nothing more than another extension of a witch hunt. But this was decided by a jury now twice. And for Donald Trump, this is different. And I'm frankly not sure how the Republican Party or the elected officials who have endorsed him as recently as just in the last week will be able to defend Donald Trump. But there's little reason to believe that they will not continue to stand by him, despite what we now know here from a jury.
I'm thinking, to your point about them carrying his water, about Elise Stefanik as recently as the New Hampshire primary, defending Donald Trump for what happened with E. Jean Carroll. I want to bring into our coverage former Deputy Assistant Attorney General and former U.S. Attorney Harry Litman. Harry, $83.3 million. What does that number say to you?
It's an emphatic victory, Alicia, but it's not a stratospheric one. We were talking about even bigger numbers, and I think that is better for E. Jean Carroll. Andrew mentioned the sort of analysis that a court of appeals will reach, and that's the sort of thing when you have such a winning case as that Kaplan try on, Robbie Kaplan, that is, and being careful to only stress certain factors. And that I think the jury was overall somewhat prudent, but it's on the other hand, to the point of accountability. I think here, besides that, it really does, I think, hurt, and his liquidity, can he even post that bond? But I'd like to say that the MVP here next to Carroll herself, I think, is Judge Kaplan. He showed that Trump can, in fact, be constrained, can be kept from his antics. And what accountability ultimately means for Trump is not being able to proclaim victory. And you notice, even in that nastygram that he sent from the plane, he talked about Biden, he talked about others. He didn't mention E. Jean Carroll. My best bet is he's done with that, and that will be a sign that he has lost, been held accountable, and in the most important way, his tail is between his legs where it deserves to be. So in that sense, it's a very very significant jury verdict and a very important performance by Judge Kaplan for other judges to emulate going forward.